สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ Welcome to NBT World's The Fireside. I'm Benjamin Ruchopagan.
And I'm Warisa Nidanat Gomon. Every week we have a fireside chat exploring what's going on in Thailand, diving deep into our latest obsessions.
Now, in last week's episode, we talked a lot about Bangkok Gems and Jewelry Fair. We talked about its history. You know, it has over 40 years of it being held, and it went from annual to biannual. We also talked about the highlights of the February show. You know, it had all these new faces and indie brands. And then there was, of course, the star of the show, right? The Treasure of Dreams by the brand Siriwanwari, which, of course, is led by Her Royal Highness Princess Siriwanwari Narirajaganya. And there's this beautiful connection with her grandmother, Her Majesty Queen Sirikit, the Queen Mother. So we covered a lot of ground in connection with, you know, Thailand as a jewelry hub. But that's really just scratching the surface, I think. In this time, we want to dive deep into the industry and really get a look at where the economy is headed for this industry, for this sector. For this episode, we're going to talk about Thailand's gem and jewelry industry and dig into some interesting consumer trends that we're seeing in 2026.
Right, so let's dive deep in, and we're going to start off with the GIT Information Center. Now, according to them, Thailand's exports of gems and jewelry for last year totaled 26.59 billion US dollars. Now that's approximately 825.38 billion baht, which represents an increase of 44.75% year on year. Now, the sector ranked as Thailand's third largest export category, accounting for 7.83% of total exports. However, it is important to note that nearly half of that value came from unbrought and semi-processed gold. Now, since 2024, gold has more than doubled its value from approximately $2,063 per ounce in January of 2024 to over $5,000 per ounce in February of this year, in 2026. So when gold is excluded, actual gems and jewelry exports stood at $13.59 billion. Again, that's around 421.85 billion baht, and it's still expanding by a strong 41.33%.
That's still a lot. I think that 41%, I mean, I'm sure any other industry, the tourism industry, for example, would kill for 20% growth, let alone 40% growth, right? But there's a very interesting caveat in the GIT report that I want to draw attention to. So let's take a look at December 2025, where total exports were valued at $1.84 billion. That's up 27% year on year. But when you focus on core jewelry categories, not including gold, December exports actually declined 26%. So this poses a few different questions that aren't immediately clear. Does December's decline in the core jewelry categories signal cooling demand or just a market correction? And does gold investment actually cannibalize other jewelry categories, or does it support it? Does gold lift it up? Like in the case of gold jewelry, that would definitely be the case. Or does it actually take away from other jewelry categories?
Those were the exports, right? But when we look at the imports, there are some interesting insights when it comes to consumer preferences. And on the whole, Thailand imported $29.34 billion, or about 911.62 billion bahts worth of gems and jewelry last year in 2025, which is up 36.52%. Now, over 71% of imports were gold, which rose nearly 36%. As we know, gold is on the rise right now.
Yes.
And we also have fine jewelry imports that rose 45%, led by gold jewelry. We also have silver metal imports that nearly doubled. Colored gemstones were mixed with hard stones like ruby, sapphire, and emerald. Those are performing much better than the soft stones. And lastly, the diamond imports, especially cut diamonds, were on decline, actually.
Hmm. So the dominance of gold and other precious metals is even more obvious in the import picture. According to JP Morgan Global Research, silver prices rose nearly 130% in 2025 from $29 per ounce to over $70 per ounce. Now they're projecting that the average price would hit $81 per ounce in 2026.
Right. And there may be a lot of investment speculation behind the rally in precious metals, but in the report, it indicates that 85% of Thailand's imports consists of raw and semi-processed materials. Now, this reinforces our understanding of Thailand's role as a regional processing and manufacturing hub.
And that's a really good place to be, actually, because you want to move up in the supply chain. You don't want to just be in the raw materials part or just trading it necessarily and speculatively. You want to be transforming it into value. You want to be adding value.
Right. Well, in this episode, we're not going to be really focusing on gold, but especially not unprocessed gold. But why do you think that we're seeing such a spike in its value at this point in time?
Well, there's a few different reasons. I'd say that it has mostly to do with investment speculation. Investors generally turn to gold because it's a safe haven asset, and a safe haven asset is when an investment will retain or increase in value during periods of market stress. So in times of financial uncertainty, investors will shift to safe havens as a way to reduce their exposure, especially, let's say in stocks. So to qualify as a safe haven asset, that asset must preserve its value during market downturn, maintain high liquidity, have low correlation with the risk assets, and be widely trusted by global investors, demonstrating stability during crises. Now, in this case, gold prices in the last couple of years have been supported by a weaker dollar, geopolitical uncertainty, central bank stockpiling of the asset, and investment momentum.
Wait, so you're saying I should have invested in gold before?
We all should have invested in gold.
Right. Too late for me now, but
Yeah.
oh well. Well, I'd like to share a few more details that break down demand country by country now. And I just wanted to start off with fine jewelry, that it made up 25% of the Thai industry's exports in 2025, growing 37% from the previous year. And this was, of course, led by gold jewelry. Major markets included the UAE, the UK, Italy, and Hong Kong, and exports to the US actually declined ever so slightly. Meanwhile, silver jewelry expanded over 31%, driven by demand from India, the US, Germany, and the UK. Platinum exports saw a sharp increase to India, partly exploiting regulatory and tariff loopholes. This growth slowed after India introduced import controls late of last year. And surprisingly, diamond exports fell significantly, especially cut diamonds, reflecting weaker demand in Hong Kong, India, Belgium, and Israel.
So the increase in silver and platinum exports, in addition to gold, reflects a pivot to precious metals. And it kind of feels like we should just go back to coins, forget the QR code. But the decline in diamonds is actually part of a broader trend. At the beginning of last year, the Rappaport Group reported that the diamond industry has actually been in crisis since 2022. There's been competition from synthetic lab-grown diamonds that are both cheaper and generally more ethical than natural diamonds. If you see Leonardo DiCaprio's movie Blood Diamond, there was a massive amount of stockpiling as well of diamonds because brands were afraid of sanctions that were imposed on Russia, which is a major producer. Meanwhile, Indian manufacturers are locked into labor commitments and procurement obligations that require them to continue production despite the change in demand. Then there was belt tightening in the Chinese market. Luxury spending has softened amid trade protectionism that is hurting consumer confidence there. So we've seen this manifest in Thailand's tourism industry as well, which has recorded fewer Chinese travelers over the last year.
Right. If I could speak a little bit about the, lab-grown diamonds, I've seen it everywhere now in malls. And the funny thing is that, that they have these diamond detectors, if it's true, if it's real or not. And those diamond detectors actually consider those lab-grown diamonds as real diamonds as well. So it's very hard to differentiate.
They're identical.
Yeah, they're identical basically. So I can see the appeal of people wanting a cheaper, more ethical way of buying that diamond. So I see that.
I mean, that's also like, to transport the logic to a totally different industry. That's why there's a lot of interest in lab-grown meat.
True.
Right? Because people are worried about, well, what's the ethical way to consume meat if they're all being slaughtered and I don't believe in taking life or whatever. Then lab-grown meat might also be another way out of that sort of moral quandary, to still have the protein that you need. So I can understand the appeal of lab-grown diamonds. I mean, myself especially, if the diamond is identical in every way that you can measure, what does it matter how it was created?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my feeling about it. I'm pro lab-grown diamond.
Yeah, same here. But let's go back to you talking about the Chinese market and luxury spending and all that. So even though Thailand's jewelry industry is more resilient than tourism, right? It's still very much affected by global uncertainty, I think.
So aside from the broader structural factors that are affecting the global gem and jewelry industry, we're also seeing a shift in consumer preferences, rapid digital integration as well, and renewed appreciation for artisanal heritage. And that means that for producers and exporters, they're going to have to calibrate the way that they create value now. And for countries like Thailand, that question isn't about whether the global demand exists. It obviously does, but how it chooses to compete in that value structure. Now, according to the GIT Trends report, this is a different report, jewelry is no longer purchased solely for adornment or beauty. It functions as a way for consumers to express their identity and shape their personal narrative, or what narrative they want to participate in.
Right. So let's go back to the GIT a little bit, where the GIT outlined 3 shifts that define the modern consumer. Number 1, personalization. Now, consumers expect customization, and jewelry is increasingly designed to reflect individual stories rather than standardized aesthetics. Number 2, sustainability and transparency. Ethical sourcing, recycled metals, and traceability are becoming a bare minimum instead of how it differentiates a brand. And lastly, but not the least, of course, the digital native purchasing behavior. Now, all generations engage digitally, but millennials and Gen Zs in particular are reshaping discovery and purchasing pathways through social media. And so influencer ecosystems and direct-to-consumer platforms are really changing this industry. And so we're technically millennials. And how much does personalization, sustainability, and digital integration mean to you?
Well, I think I'm with you on the digital integration. Actually, when I reflect after researching this, I was thinking, actually, all of my recent jewelry purchases have been online. Like every necklace I've gotten or every sort of accessory I've gotten, I've actually shopped it online, or it was an ad served to me and then I like explored the store or the brand page. So actually that does make sense to me. I feel like I'm not going into a shop and looking at a lot of jewelry. So there's that aspect to it as well. And then there's the personalization aspect that I actually really do appreciate. If there is I understand it's a value add, to like engrave or laser etch, but there is an aspect of personalization. Like when you pick a stone that's unique to you, or you have a combination of beads that is unique to you, that makes it personalized as well. There's lots of different meanings behind personalization, I think. So that makes sense to me. Sustainability, even though, on paper, it should be the most important thing, to be totally honest, it's not the most important factor when it comes to choosing. I know, don't cancel me over this. But sustainability, while important, I do kind of think they all should be sustainable.
True.
I think that's maybe why I give it the least weight, even though it's really the barrier to entry, in my opinion. So I hope I saved myself there. So keeping in mind those three broader shifts in consumer behavior, that's personalization, sustainability, and digital integration, I want to take a look at four macro trends that have emerged in the jewelry world in 2025 to 2026. Now, this comes courtesy of Trend Vision Jewelry Plus Forecasting by Vincenzo. Now, design trend number one, digital nouveau. This trend represents the fusion of nature, heritage, and innovation, merging early 20th century Art Nouveau elegance with digital age advancements, like digital age processes. So, to be honest, it's such a can of worms to explain, but my understanding is that the original Art Nouveau movement was about femininity, nature, and very sensual lines rather than rigid geometry like triangles and squares and circles. And this was meant to be a backlash against the Industrial Revolution of the time because it came out in the early 1900s, the early 20th century, when everything was being mass produced for the first time and kind of losing that sense of craftsmanship in the cottage industry. So I have some pictures here, and you can kind of see like this art style. There's an element of two-dimensional kind of flat aesthetics, but then there's also a lot of nature in it. There's a lot of very sensual lines. A lot of women, especially, is very woman focused. So that is where Digital Nouveau can be thought of as a sort of successor movement to Art Nouveau, in my opinion.
Digital Nouveau characteristics include AI-generated or algorithm-inspired patterns, organic shapes and lines inspired by nature, similar to Art Nouveau, and rough luxe, creating contrast between raw and refined materials. Digital Nouveau is said to reflect the tension between nature and technology, human craftsmanship, and generative code.
That's right. And then we can see some of these images here that like this necklace, for example, this was generated by a computer, this pattern, and then they made it in real life through machine technology. And then according to Siti Chai, the brands that combine digital tools with narrative depth can capture both the heritage and the innovation-driven audiences. So I know you don't really go for raw stones, but what do you think about this trend in general?
I love that they use natural elements, I suppose. Like, it does kind of give that natural splash of color. But like you said, you know me, like I'm kind of a minimalist. So this is not my style, but I guess like this would really work for people who love to wear, say, plain clothes and just want a splash of color.
Yeah, I see that. I see that side. And I also think that, there's a lot in sort of Thai design and Thai artistry that can, participate in this trend like Laikanok, that really lends itself really well to Art Nouveau as well. So I can see how, there could be a Thai version of Digital Nouveau as well.
Right. That's interesting. Maybe you can start a brand.
Yeah, I know.
The Ben Nouveau.
Yeah.
All right. Let's check out our next trend, which is opulent extravaganza. Now, this is a very maximalist trend with heavy references to an imperial age. And it feels like a backlash to what might be considered the oppressive restrictions of minimalism, even though I quite like minimal jewelry myself.
Same here.
But opulent extravaganza characteristics include large, rare gemstones, obviously, royal or Maharaja-inspired aesthetics, and narrative-heavy legacy pieces.
That's right. The aesthetics of modern opulence draw heavily from historical influences, particularly from the colonial era, Georgian and Victorian and Indian-inspired designs. This segment really reinforces the strength of the luxury category, which already represents 40% of global revenue. Now, it works really well for established brands who can leverage their archives and they can go back into their heritage designs. Meanwhile, for emerging brands, you're going to want to focus on the storytelling aspect that creates the perception of legacy. Now, to bring it back to Thailand, we definitely have a huge vocabulary of royal designs and traditional designs that can participate in the trend. On many occasions, for example, Her Majesty Queen Sirikit, the Queen Mother, wore what is known as the Thai traditional tiara, also known as the rat klau. Now, you can see a version of this worn by traditional Thai dancers called rat klau yat, and rat glau pleo. So this is something that this is a way that we can find ourselves in that trend as well.
Now, moving on to design trend number 3, street coolness. This is inspired by urban street style culture. This trend brings the freshness of cultural fusion and is driven by global digital communities. Street coolness characteristics include layering and scale, large silhouettes, that is, cross-cultural references, convertible and transformable pieces. Functionality and experimentation are central. Within this design trend, you can expect casted, chunky pieces with hammered textures and handmade finishes.
You're also going to see a lot of carved talismans and hidden messages that imbue each piece with deeper meaning. So, beading, like we talked about before, incorporating both precious and semi-precious stones, is evolving from high-level, sort of high-end jewelry to mainstream appeal. The implication for brands is that there's a heavy emphasis on design agility, being able to adapt to these trends and adapt to urban inspirations that becomes a competitive advantage. Transformable pieces also extend a product life cycle. Like if you can turn it into different, like a necklace that can become a bracelet, or bracelets that can become different kinds of accessories, So that will help to extend the product life cycle and and refresh the look using the same piece, and also enhance the perception of value. If you feel like it's very flexible, then you're going to want to pick it up more likely than not. Now, urban communities, in my opinion, have a way of becoming very eclectic, and they mix and match influences and culture. What they're talking about here is a digital community. It's a sort of a digital culture. And that's where you see a lot of eclectic influences. Now you're not just constricted by the local cultures that surround you. You can draw inspiration from all across the globe. And I got to say that the conversation about appropriation versus appreciation, I think right now it's tipping heavily towards appreciation. I think more and more people are they're over being told what they can and can't, do, and what they can and cannot be inspired by.
True.
I think people, they're much more willing to make mistakes and just try it out first. And then, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Right.
So I think that, participating in the culture, you're gonna expect these mistakes no matter what. You're gonna have to allow for people to make mistakes.
And what I like about this jewelry design, or this design concept anyways, is that it's very appropriate for this day and age as well. Like in the past, typically if, a certain trend is coming, the whole world has to go with that trend. Like for example, in the 70s, it was bell pants. So everybody has to wear bell pants.
Yeah, bell bottoms.
Bell bottoms, yeah. But nowadays, you can wear skinny jeans, bell bottoms. You can wear mini skirt, long skirt. And same thing with the jewelry. I think it's the same concept. It can be very eclectic, and you can still be very trendy right now. Now let's move swiftly to our next design, which is all about escapism. And it's called the Wonderland. Now, it's all about crafting happiness through the fusion of fantasy and reality. In a high-stress global environment, jewelry can become an object of delight. And this idea is becoming more relevant in what is known as the joy economy, emphasizing the pursuit of happiness, optimism, and emotional connections. Wonderland characteristics include hyper-realistic floral or animal forms, bold, bright colors, and surreal abstraction, and color shifting or treated gemstones.
Yeah, I think Wonderland jewelry, I think this might be mine, to be honest, because I don't like to be too self-serious. I like to, I think that I just can't take myself too seriously with this, and this kind of leans into what I kind of enjoy. Things should bring you joy, things should spark joy. So Wonderland jewelry can have really interactive and playful elements like pets, bubbles, lip shapes, and polka dots. And in this case, brands are really encouraged to lean into more playful designs, which can be very, highly shareable on social media. So that can increase its organic reach as well. So what do you think about Wonderland as a trend?
Can I be honest? I never thought that this look could work on me until I saw this Instagram post of this a senior lady actually, but
Yeah.
she's very well dressed and she's very playful, and she would wear exactly these kind of jewelry,
Yeah.
and it suits her personality. I think if you can carry it with your personality, you can wear it.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's about how you sell it. You know, if you wear it with confidence, then nobody's going to tell you can't, right?
Right.
So yeah, I definitely feel like, I mean, I'm struggling to think how I would wear it necessarily, but I definitely feel like I'm more inclined to gift it.
Yeah,
You know,
maybe.
It's just because it's just a fun thing to share with
True.
other people.
Yes. Well, now we turn it to our audience. Which trend speaks to you the most?
Let us know in our comment section on NBT World's online channels. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ